Welcome back to Bet On. I totally butchered that last close. I meant Georgia getting into the college football playoff. Obviously, they're playing in the SEC championship game this weekend. Touchdown underdog to LSU. This is going to be really interesting, Marco. It matters so much more to Georgia than it does to LSU. This is the best defense I believe LSU's faced all year. I can make a case why I don't think Georgia should be in the college football playoff, but I'll just let you talk about the SEC championship game.
Well, this is the best game on the card this week.
Yeah.
I think this one in, honestly, the Friday night game.
I was going to say, I think Utah-Oregon's going to be a really great game.
We know the Pac-12 is like the redheaded stepchild, okay? And nobody, cares.
I think it's Matt Lindemann that has the Pac-12 is not a Power 5 school in his bio on Twitter, and every single time I see it, it cracks me up because I understand his point. He has he makes a good argument for it.
But honestly, this is the year that the Pac-12 deserves a team in. If it's obviously, if it's Utah, I think they deserve the place in the championship game because they are the real deal, offensively and defensively. You want to talk about a good defense, that's another story. It's Utah, in my opinion, is one of the best in the country. You look at this Georgia team, the problem's definitely not their defense. It's their offense. Are they going to be able to score enough points to stay with LSU? We look at this team and we look at what Georgia's done all throughout the season, and they contain everybody, but they don't score points. This is a team that's only scored over 27 points, I think once or twice all season. And you look at that, 27 or fewer points, 6 games. You look at last week, they get Georgia Tech. Just throw that game out. Georgia Tech was so outmanned in that game. They had no shot in there. And with that defense shutting them down, that they're coming off that impressive score, but the real team is LSU. They've done it all year. LSU's defense is good as well. The problem with LSU's defense is when you look at it and compare it to Georgia's, the difference is Georgia's in games where their defense has to play the full 4 quarters all the time because they're not getting out of the 20s. So they have to play defense. LSU's defense, their offense scores so many points that generally they're bringing in players in the second half, making substitutions, and they're going into prevent defenses in the late third, fourth quarter because they'll give up yards for clock time because they're ahead so much. I think LSU, you talked about most complete teams and everything else. I think LSU is legitimate national championship contender this year, and I think they get the job done against Georgia.
By far. The question, and I know the answer because everybody has the same answer, but I want to disagree. If Georgia wins, they're in.
Georgia wins, they're in. Absolutely.
I just can't buy it. I think
they're a double overtime loss away from being undefeated.
Get to South Carolina. I'm sorry, but Oklahoma's loss to K-State, Utah's loss to USC is not the same as the loss to South Carolina.
If you beat LSU, if you beat Auburn on the road, I mean, those are big wins.
I will agree that Oklahoma doesn't have any big wins besides Baylor.
Right.
I would say that.
And the knock when we talked about Baylor is their out-of-conference schedule is going to hurt them if it's down to them and whoever they're going to be compared to. Because their 3 out-of-conference games that they played at the beginning of the year were the little sisters of the poor, and it just doesn't help their resume.
Fair. All right, VR, what are you seeing from your guys?
I'm biased. I have a best bet for you on this game, so I'm going to save it for that segment.
I like that.
I already bet it, released it to subscribers, so it's it's a bet. It's not an opinion. With that said, I'll talk about the side here. I have a bias. I need Georgia. I have a future on Georgia. I got Georgia to make the playoffs as a future and Georgia to win the national championship as a future.
Wow.
I thought they were that team being overlooked coming into the season. Not that they were the best team in college football, but that they offered the best future odds. And again, my job's to place good bets, not to predict outcomes. Keep placing good bets. Long term, you'll turn a profit. I thought that was a good bet. Now they need to win this game for me to cash those tickets, or at least have a chance to cash one of them or 2 of them. With that said, I think Georgia is live here. Listen, I'm high on LSU, fan of that team. Not surprised at the season they've had. I know no one saw it coming into this year, but they're as loaded as they come. I think, though, that Georgia defense, man, I think they're going to give this LSU team problems. I think this is the best defense they have faced all season. And I think it's going to take them a little while to figure it out. And LSU's winning with offense, not with defense. And I think that's where you may see a problem. If Georgia gets ahead of LSU, I mean, they've played well as the hammer. How do you play if you're the nail? Can you still win a game if you're not the hammer? And with Georgia, I'm not sure they're going to be the hammer.
Okay, so you mentioned you have a couple Georgia futures. Just because we have a little bit extra time, anybody that has...
Safe for Ralph.
Yes, we do. You're right. I always forget about poor Ralph. Never mind, guys. All right, great.
You were going to learn something about hedging. Now you got to wait.
I wanted to ask if you're going to hedge your futures at all.
I saw it was
Marco's got to keep me in this because poor Ralph will run out of time otherwise. Great stuff, guys. Can't wait to watch this game. We're going to bring in our resident stat guy, Ralph Michaels, with this week's TNA. My man, Mr. Ralph Michaels, with the trends and angles. Let's do it. I know it's a smaller card this week, but I'm curious to see what you found out for us.
You know, there's a couple things. And the first two, I mean, there's not a lot to take out of it, but I just found it's interesting to share. So we have Memphis and Cincinnati, who played last week, and they're playing again this week. So in the last 19 years, how many times have teams played back-to-back games?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, because obviously when the conferences do the schedules, they aren't necessarily planning on two teams meeting in the conference championship. 5 times?
It's been 3, and in the last 4 years only. So Pac-12 did it once. I think UAB did it last year. In fact, they played back to back.
Oh yes, I remember that.
The favorites the favorites went 2-1 straight up, but 0-3 ATS. So small sample size, but the dog has covered the first 3 times that's occurred. So is there something where playing them twice where you're familiar and the gap closes? You know, the funny thing about the Memphis game is the lines come down.
Well, that's
because
what
last
makes it
week
so
they had must win.
Yes.
You know, and this week it's win and you're in, regardless of who you are. All right, so now let's talk about same season revenge. Since 1998, there have been 49 times teams have played each other in the same season. They've played each other in the regular season, then in the conference
finals.
finals.
A lot of conferences, you do play each other depending on which division
Big
you're
12
in.
would happen every time.
Yeah.
You're right, and it's likely to happen because you have 2 crossover games or 3 crossover games. So the team that won the first game has gone 29-20 straight up in the second. So when people say it's hard to beat a team twice, it's not. Out of the 49 times, the team that's won the first game won the second 29 times.
How'd they do ATS?
How about 23-23-3?
Good grief.
I mean, that's pretty Mendoza line. But I had to give you something out of this.
That is really interesting, though.
If the favorite won the first game,
okay,
and they're a favorite in the second game.
So Oklahoma.
Like Memphis, like Oklahoma, like Ohio State, and like Boise. They're 19-2 straight up, 13-7-1 against the spread.
Now, I'm not rushing to lay giant money line chalk here with those 3, but that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some big favorites in that role in the last couple. So now I want to look at teams off back-to-back wins of 21 or more points. Back-to-back-to-back wins of 21 or more points, and you're favored by 20 or more.
Okay.
So you're worried about laying those big points.
So basically, it's just Clemson.
It's Clemson. It's since 2009, from week 6 on. And why I looked at week 6 on was because you were into conference play. You could beat up some ugly foes early the first 3 games. So from week 6 on, if you've won back-to-back-to-back games by 21 or more points, and now you're a favorite of 20 or more, you have gone 79-30 against the spread, 72.5%.
That's kind of crazy. And honestly, who wants to really step in front of Clemson? Because is Virginia going to be able to score? What are they going to be able to do against this potent offense?
No, I will mention, that is Clemson, but for those guys that bet FCS, that's also James Madison in the playoffs against Monmouth.
James Madison. Look at you coming to
Madison's
FCS.
A solid team this year.
Absolutely.
I expect them to roll over Monmouth. So that system applies to Madison as well.
Well, yeah, because they have a nice bracket where the best team plays the worst team. So.
Oh, yeah, it's one against, there's a bye week as well.
Okay.
Because you have the 12 teams, so you have the bye week and then the top. So when you're one of those top 4 seeds, not only are you playing your first game at home, you're playing against a team that just had to battle someone.
Great stuff, as always, from Ralph. If you guys want more stuff from Ralph, head over to Twitter, @CalSportsLV. I'm going to make him better about answering all these questions that keep I keep getting added in on Twitter. We're going to take a quick break. But when we step out, it's time to walk the dogs. That's right. Barking Dogs is up next. I wonder if I can get Marco to bark for me again.